They set these people up for failure. They inevitably fail. They sell them communism. Here, we'll forgive your student debt. Let's do a UBI. Let's do all this free welfare services. And they're like, okay, well, these are the only people offering us an option because I can't afford groceries. There's no way I can afford to pay off my debt. And then the right points and laughs and says, oh my God, these communists, they don't want to work. They're failures, they're losers, they suck. And it's just so counterintuitive to what we need to do to win. Hey everybody, welcome back to Indoctrination. I'm your host, Olivia Rondeau, and today we have a very special guest. We have the head, the chair, the chief of the Libertarian Party. We have Angela McArdle, a lovely woman who I've had the pleasure to meet at Freedom Fest this past year. And Maggie is out this week, so I'm just manning the ship by myself, and I'm really excited to have Angela here. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to just say your brief background before we get into everything, because I think you're a really interesting person. I think you're actually really funny because I've been following you on Twitter for a long time. And so I just want to give the few listeners a chance to get to know you if they don't already.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm delighted to be here. So I chair the National Libertarian Party. I don't know how exciting or cringeworthy that is to your average listener, but I've got plenty of things to say about it. It's a wild ride. It's a roller coaster, fighting over the direction and messaging and strategy of the national party. I'm a former 2-time congressional candidate when I lived back in California for the congressional district of the 34th district. That's near downtown LA. That's where I'm from. I live in Texas now. I've got a small baby, and I do a lot of other cool things too, but it usually takes a backseat to running the third largest political party in the country and all of the administrative grunt work that comes with that.
I can imagine. And just so you know, the listeners are very libertarian friendly. There's a lot of independents, a lot of LP members that listen. So I think you have a lot of fans here. I wanted to know, because I don't even think I've seen you talk about this much on Twitter, but what got you started in your political journey, especially as a woman in the libertarian space? Because we talk about that a lot on this channel, trying to get more women and more young people and more minorities and people who are kind of underserved by the rights and the liberty movement into the movement. So how did you get your start?
I grew up in a traditional conservative Christian home in the South. Mostly. My dad actually, he was the pastor of a Christian Missionary Alliance church. So we actually did have I don't like to use this word because I feel like it's not, a multicultural experience. When I say that, I mean literally just exposed to people from around the world, from missionaries, like different cultures that way, not the,
So you don't mean like diversity is our greatest strength type multicultural?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, we knew people who were literally from Africa, China, Russia. And so I think that we just were like a little bit more open-minded in all the good ways, if that makes sense. And, eventually we moved to California. My dad took a job elsewhere. And I remember having a conversation when I was a teenager with someone else who was like this older, like rocker dude in the community who was well respected. And I was saying, I'm a Christian, I'm definitely like a Republican. I was like not able to vote at this age, but coming from a very like political Southern family, it's like you're 9 years old and you're like, I'm a Republican. It's like, nah, I think you're a 9-year-old. So, I was like, but I don't think, people should go to jail for weed. This seems like stupid. Like a lot of my friends smoke weed and I don't want to see them in jail. That makes no sense. That'd be hypocritical of me. And I don't really care about gay marriage. It seems like from the Christian perspective, don't they want gay people to be like conservative and do like the thing and have families and kids? And he said, well, you sound more like a libertarian. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm familiar with that word. So that's what I'll be. Very deep thoughts. And it took, like several more years when I first heard about Ron Paul, when I heard about his first race in 2008, that was like a real red pill moment for me because I thought, oh, like there's more libertarians out there. And I started to understand it like a little bit on a deeper level rather than just like the Gary Johnson, like, smoke weed, hate taxes kind of thing. And then, shortly after that, I read the Creature from Jekyll Island, and that was what, like, I was really passionate about being freaked out over central banking, if you could say that. And that was what helped me to like really understand like what are, from my perspective, like libertarians, like main gripes with the government. So it was sort of like it happened over a period of time and, over a period of different circumstances, different types of red pilling.
Okay. That's interesting that you also kind of started to come into it as a teenager like myself. And I always find it interesting to find out if people came from the right or the left, because I know so many people on both sides who are like, I was a Democrat, I was pro-gay marriage, I was pro-weed, but I started to see the left leave me behind, or I was a conservative Republican and I just decided to actually like educate myself and not care about weed and not care about gay marriage, because that was kind of the side I came from as well. I grew up as the pastor's granddaughter in a Baptist church, and my family was not outright super political, but being Christian and being like the pastor's family, it was kind of like a conservative environment. And I first came to politics during the 2016 election, and I was in high school. And that was just a crazy time to get into politics. I mean, I know so many people who are a little bit older who got kind of like radicalized and red pilled by Ron Paul, which I'm so envious by, because that's a way better person to get you into like politics than Donald Trump. But over time, it kind of had a similar evolution where I was like, am I really a Republican if I don't care about weed? I want gays to get married. I want to end the Fed because Republicans don't actually care about that. Like, there was just so many things that over time I realized that conservatives, even if they maybe espouse a lot of these views, they don't really care enough to vote for them. And so that really started to mess with my head. And so, of course, I discovered this third party arises. I think I found out about it on Twitter, to be honest, because I had no exposure to libertarians in school, or it was not taught to me pretty much at all. I even majored in poli-sci back before I dropped out of college, and they literally never mentioned it. So I think I found out about it first on social media. I guess I want to ask, are there plans to kind of put more outreach out there so people maybe can find out about it before they're like chronically online? Because I kind of found out about it when I was chronically online.
Yeah. Man, it's chronically online, and then there's terminally online. The next phase.
I'm in the terminal phase.
Terminal. It's terminal. Oh, geez. So right now we're in the middle of putting together college libertarian chapters, and I think that's going to be something that's like really critical. And that's where the left really owns us, right? Is they get to people early on, and they heavily indoctrinate people. So we're way behind the curve in that respect. And then it gets into, like, do you really want to be like in the business of like heavily indoctrinating children in your ideological views? It's like, but we at least need to be out there, like, sharing our point of view. I think that college, it's like almost too late. Going to start maybe in high school, but we're behind the curve. So we're doing the thing in colleges. I know that in Arkansas we've got some really active college chapters. I don't know if I should call out minors on the show. I was just going to give a shout out, but they're out there, the ones doing the work.
That's great, though. And I think there definitely is a space for it on many campuses. I went to a relatively small school in like upstate Pennsylvania, and I joined the College Republicans because there really was no other similar group that I felt like I could join. And I went to like a couple meetings, and these people, I'm so sorry, these people were like idiots. Like these people were just spewing the same talking points over and over and over and over without really trying to tackle the root cause of the problem. And this was when Trump was still president, so it wasn't like Biden inflation and stuff like that yet. Right. But it was still pointing everything at the left. I'm like, we have a Republican president right now. And he doesn't particularly care about the Second Amendment. He doesn't particularly care about ending the Fed or giving us a true free market. He cares about tariffs. He cares about sending money to Israel and sending foreign aid to other countries. And these people really didn't see a problem with it when it was our team that was doing it. So I had to leave. And so I've been an independent. I've been unaffiliated this whole time. And I've been pretty much open to just voting for individuals at this point. So I've supported libertarians. I've supported Republicans. During the 2020 election, I remember I was passing out flyers and door knocking. I was passing out flyers for like a local Republican candidate and Joe Jorgensen at the same time. And people were like very confused. And I was kind of confusing myself because I was like, who do I even vote for? Like, I felt a lot of loyalty to Trump at the time. I don't anymore because of all the promises he kind of just ignored and went back on. And now it's a little bit insane. And I don't know if I will even vote in the 2024 election. I feel like that's a common theme. Do you see that as well?
Oh, totally. And I mean, there's a ton of pressure on me as the chair of the Libertarian Party. And the reality is that I don't get to like handpick our candidate. It's whoever decides to run or pops up. But right now, while we don't have a really strong contender, people will be offended by that. You know, go ahead and let your heads explode. Like I'm communicating what has been communicated to me. That's my job, is, you know, to be honest about it. We don't have someone who's pulled out ahead of the race, who's got everybody super excited. So a lot of people are telling me, you know, like, unless the LP has someone else announced that I'm really excited about, I may stay home and vote or not vote. I mean, my position on that is like, great. You know, what am I going to say? No, please go vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Or no, like, you know, in a perfect world, if I could wave a magic wand, no one would be voting at the national level. We'd be doing things locally. We'd be saving, you know, national issues for like serious national issues like national defense. And that would be it. But, you know, that's not the world we're in.
Right. And I've seen, and I'm friends with a couple of the people who have announced, you know, running under the LP, and good luck to them. Good luck to you guys. But I agree with you. There's not a front runner. There's nobody that has gotten a large group of people excited. There is one person that if they announced, I would be very excited for, and I would vote for in a heartbeat, but they haven't yet, or they may never. So it just kind of is what it is. It is what it is. But I do appreciate what you guys do, regardless of what happens during the presidential elections. Because I think that people make the mistake of only really paying attention to a third party when it comes to a big election. But you guys, I mean, I think you would agree, you guys are much more effective when it comes to winning local elections, which you guys have done multiple times. Yeah.
I mean, at this point in time, the presidential race is really there to support down-ticket candidates and build a grassroots movement. And candidates who say they're going to win this election cycle, it's your job to campaign, right? And to put forward like winner energy and to get people excited. And when you lead by saying like, I'm going to lose, but vote for me anyway, you don't really get that. But the reality is it's highly unlikely that one of our candidates is going to win the presidential election this election cycle. There's still a lot of utility in it. If you're someone who's like a disenfranchised voter, or you want to see like things really happen in your community, voting for the LP presidential candidate is a way to do that, because it's all about messaging. It's about growing a grassroots base. And hopefully this term, our candidate is going to do a lot of youth outreach. And I think those are all things that are really important. So that's what you're supporting when you vote LP.
What would you say to people who are like, well, Ron Paul was a Republican and he had all this success for the liberty movement as a Republican. Why should we pay attention to the LP?
Yep. Really good question. Ron Paul, he really did something incredible. And we always talk about who's going to be the next Ron Paul. And I think that the truth is we're probably not going to see a next Ron Paul, because we don't have anyone in our party, or really even our movement, who was a country doctor who delivered like half the babies in his congressional district. This is clearly something that we should be thinking about, and we should be thinking about it as a political strategy, that people who go out into the community and deliver babies and do, you know, other things that are just like incredibly like helpful and wholesome, those people are revered in your communities. Mm-hmm. But I don't see anyone anyone else in the GOP who has that energy either. It's just, that's going to take like a lot of time to do. And so to the extent that people think they're going to go into the GOP and be the next Ron Paul, like I don't think so.
That makes a lot of sense. And I haven't really thought about it like that, but I guess because I'm young, I just like didn't really grow up hearing about like what Ron Paul was doing before he ran for president. But that man delivered Selena. Like he, we wouldn't have Selena without Ron Paul. Okay. So I do understand what you're saying. So I guess it's like we kind of need like a hero to rise up, like an actual hero.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard to create that, like in a little Liberty laboratory. It's got to be organic and spontaneous. And we've got to adopt a low time preference strategy too. This is something I talk about a lot. Like people are really anxious and eager to win. And I understand that. Trust me, like I have plenty of pressure on me. But the reality is that the LP and conservatives, to an extent, maybe in a different way, have adopted like a high time preference strategy. They're chasing the next dopamine hit. They want to win the next 2-year election cycle. They're not focused on cultivating a youth movement and having those people in 10 to 20 years take over as leaders of the country. They're not focused on education. They're not focused on all of the industries that are captured by Democrats. And so until we kind of shift our perspective and try to gain long-term wins, like we're not going to be as nearly as successful, and especially not at the federal level. Like Republicans certainly win elections, but they lose like across the board in so many other ways. It's because they definitely have an advantage over libertarians when it comes to elections. But as far as the rest of the country culturally, they're way behind the curve, just like we are.
Republicans seem to win despite their strategy. They have a great habit of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Like they just love it. And I see, and in regards to nobody really having a strong youth movement that's right of center, it's almost like they don't want a youth movement. They're actively working against the youth movement because the messaging is Gen Z and millennials, they suck. They don't want to work. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. They're not getting married. They're not having kids. They're like slut shaming people. They're telling people that you're worthless if you're a spinster, if you're 25 and unmarried. It's just like it makes everyone feel like a failure. I think that what we need to be doing is saying these generations have been so ruined and disenfranchised by the government. Let's feel a little sympathy, because we did grow up with leftist messaging. You can't just unlearn that in a single election cycle by watching a PragerU video. You do have to do outreach.
Yeah, you've got to do outreach. It's going to take work. They need to work to try to recapture institutions that they've lost to the left. That's something I'm really focused on for the LP and the broader liberty movement. It's like this is something that I've spoken with some of our mutual friends about. Like the messaging that comes out of the GOP sometimes around Black fathers is super like off-putting. And it's the same thing about women who are over 25, and being
it's just off-putting, right? It's like, okay, we all see that there is an issue. Like we do see that a lot of families are not being able to be supported on one income. We do see that people are getting married a lot later or not getting married at all, and that the birth rates are below replacement rates. We see this. Some people don't think it's a problem. Like these are the far leftist people who think that they're anti-natalists because they want to save the world from like climate change or whatever. But moderates and liberals and conservatives and libertarians, we see these issues. It's the issue of like putting the blame on the victims, because a single depressed, childless woman who's on SSRIs and birth control, and she's been lied to her whole life, and she's sad and she feels disenfranchised, and she lives in a city and she feels unsafe, and there's nothing that she can really personally do. She's the victim in the situation. The man,
you gotta have a solution.
Yeah, and of course, on the other side, the young man who feels lonely and depressed and maybe suicidal and has anxiety issues and feels unaccomplished because he's in $100,000 in student debt and the job market's like crap right now. that he's the victim too. We're not just like Gen Z millennials that don't want to work. I mean, of course, there is a large group of people who are like that, but I don't think that's the majority. I think if you go to middle America, especially if you leave the cities, a lot of young people are like exactly like Gen X, exactly like boomers. They're hardworking people. They want to have families. I'm 22. I want to be able to have a family and buy a house one day. And I'm kind of like doom-pilled about it. I'm kind of like, literally, where would I buy a house? Like the middle of nowhere in Ohio? Like, where would I buy a house? Where? I guess I could,
Yeah.
but
Well, white pill. Some of my libertarian friends just got married here in their mid-20s
Oh.
and bought a home, like just like a mile away from
That's
me. So
actually
I was
great. And
very
I did
excited.
have 2 white pills recently. 2 of my friends who they're like in they're all below 25. Both of them, these are separate people, but they both got married to their husbands within the last year, and they both gave birth on the same day last week. And I'm just like so ecstatic. And so I guess it is happening, but that's also who I kind of surround myself with anyways. So it's like average city folk aren't doing that. I myself am not doing that. I would love to have the chance to do that someday, but it's just so unattainable for so many people. But the conservative response is you just have to make sacrifices. My dad supported us. And like, that's when your house was $6,000.
Yeah, it's a little different. I mean, we've got to provide solutions. One thing is that young people crave responsibility. I think Jordan Peterson has a really powerful message about that, or, at least he did. I'm talking about like pre-Daily Wire Jordan Peterson when he was just doing his lectures.
Yeah.
It was like, it's true. Young people don't want to just be told that they suck and that, that's it. Like it's fatalistic. They want to be given a solution and some responsibility, because I think so many people's self-worth have suffered through all of this, so it's like, so you find yourself in a lousy situation, and then what have you got, who's reaching out to you? So you have Democrats and people on the far left saying, none of it's your fault. Come over here, be angry at the world. This sucks, that sucks. Let's have communism. Let's do this and that, and then you have conservatives saying, haha, like, you're an idiot. You made poor choices. Like, you've got to have someone who's willing to say, like, you know what, it's really sucky what happened to you. It's sucky, that you were a part of that situation, but you can totally take ownership of this. You can turn your life around, and we're here to support you and kind of give you some guidance. We don't even have that. We don't even have like a little like pat on the back.
Yeah, I think the worst example of what they do it with is student debt, because of course the left swoops in and coddles these people who, of course, should not have been tricked into taking on $50,000 of student debt when they were 17, 18 years old. These people can't even drink alcohol. These people can't buy a home. What other institution, bank, otherwise would give a 17-year-old or 18-year-old tens of thousands of dollars and say, I trust you to pay this back? Only the leftist-run educational institution system. So they set these people up for failure. They inevitably fail. They sell them communism. Here, we'll forgive your student debt. Let's do a UBI. Let's do all this free welfare services. And they're like, okay, well, these are the only people offering us an option because I can't afford groceries. There's no way I can afford to pay off my debt. And then the right points and laughs and says, oh my God, these communists, they don't want to work. They're failures. They're losers. They suck. And it's just so counterintuitive to what we need to do to win.
Yeah, they need better. I think people need better guidance probably in high school before you get into college. Like, by the way, don't take that degree in gender studies or basket weaving or whatever it is. Like, that's not a good path. It's okay if you want to go to college, but be aware of the massive amount of debt. Trade school, there's nothing wrong with it. Plumbers make a ton of money. They are very happy people. Like, when you consider like their salary and how they don't have enormous amounts of debt. We don't usually, young people don't hear that anymore. There's an enormous amount of pressure on people to perform really well on standardized testing and to follow a specific path. And it's such a shame because that path is just like, for so many people, it leads to unhappiness and a miserable financial situation.
I'm kind of one of those people, and I'm glad I got out of it early because I don't have any college debt because I dropped out I think after my third or fourth semester. And I dropped out during COVID because it was just so expensive that I could not justify doing online school for thousands and thousands of dollars, especially when I'm much more of an in-person learner. I was on the dean's list, and then all of a sudden I'm like failing 3 classes as soon as we go to Zoom school. So that was it was a no-brainer to me to drop out and save myself the thousands of dollars. But so many people didn't do that. So, I mean, so many people were just kept on the same track because whatever societal pressure, educational pressure, parental pressure, thankfully my parents were like, yeah, I mean, this is too expensive. We don't want you to be in debt. So thankfully I had that to back me up. But it's a racket. It's a racket that the left controls. As soon as your child enters kindergarten at a public school and graduates below the math and reading proficiency, they just shove these kids off to college and where they can barely do anything, and they just give them all this money and say, hey, pay this back in a couple years.
Yep, absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll turn things around with some libertarian college outreach. Beyond that, though, I mean, we got to move to doing outreach in high schools, and there's debate over whether or not we should be doing it in junior high, but I like to push and say that we should be doing it.
At least try to add things to the curriculum. If not like sending a representative or a club in, at least lobby to these schools, because why should I go through 12 years of schooling and then get to college and then find out about the third largest political party in this country? How is that fair?
Yeah. And I mean, the obvious thing, too, is, pull your kids out of public schools. But for the people who are not going to do that, I would still like to reach that demographic, because I can't just say, oh, well, that doesn't exist, because the correct libertarian answer is to pull your kids out of public school. Like, the reality is they're going to exist, at least in the nearer term future. So we might as well do something about them.
Yeah, and it's super easy to just say, well, abolish the Department of Education and your kids shouldn't be in public school anyways. But the fact of the matter is, we all pay taxes so these kids can go to public school. Yep. Maybe if we didn't have so many taxes, everybody could afford to send their kids to a public school or private school, charter school, homeschool, whatever. But I guess that's the reality we're living in. And I went to one of the most woke, probably the wokest school district in the country, probably under LA Unified School District and New York City Public Schools. I went to Montgomery County, Maryland Public Schools, and that's a suburb of DC. And every time you see something in the news where it's like, this trans student assaulted a child in the bathroom, this school is putting back in a mask mandate, it's always MCPS. Like today in the news, a local elementary school just announced that they're putting back the mask mandate. They're putting back the mask mandate in this one elementary school here in the DC area. And it's just like, are we going to do this every 3 years?
Are people flipping out?
They are.
People need to be, they need to flip out. And no one should send their kid to school. People should mob that school. It should just be overrun with angry people. I don't care, even if you're not a parent. Just go and raise hell.
Honestly, because the letter they sent home, they said 3 students tested positive for COVID. 3.
Oh, please. What about the common cold? That spreads.
The flu. Nuts. I mean, it's just so insane. Keep your kid home from school if they're sick. That's all I can tell you. That's all there really is to do.
Children get sick, and then other kids get sick around them. This is just part of the human condition. I think this is really indicative of the revolt that progressives have against basic biology. And to the extent that we want to overcome the challenges of nature, I'm very sympathetic. I love having a blow dryer, right? I joke about how annoyed I am that central air is drying on my skin, but I'm glad that I don't live in a 106 degree temperature house. But people seem to have a really difficult time having enough discernment to tell what in nature should be messed with and what shouldn't be messed with, and what we can and can't overcome. And trying to completely eradicate or control any type of illness is completely unrealistic and insane.
And it's so insane to me how so many professionals, so many medical professionals and experts have come to the conclusion this is endemic. This is going to be like the flu season. We're going to see cases spike at a certain time, probably every year, until this thing dies out, which may be never. because different strains of the flu come out every couple of years. It's going to be like that. Okay. Are we literally going to lock down the country every single year? The left would be happy to. The left would be so happy to, because they get to do their whole UBI. They get to sneak in all these things in the COVID relief plan. They get to do everything they want. And your kids are going to suffer for it.
Stay in your pod and eat bugs. It's just a horrible thing to do to children. Children need... Could you imagine every podcast you did, like all the guests, like that's completely insane. You can't communicate well with people. They need to develop communication skills, and this is totally nuts.
Children need to see facial features and facial expressions.
Yeah, it's just part of their normal development. It doesn't surprise me though. Like the school that is the most trying to trans their kids would also be the one that's instituting mask mandates. They hate biology. They have contempt for the natural order.
Last year I was on staff at the Post Millennial, and we put out this article that showed MCPS, Montgomery County, had I believe a 400% increase in trans students. And most of them were identifying as non-binary, not even like going through the whole like medical transition thing. Nobody knows. That's the funny part. Nobody even knows. It means they just like give themselves a bad haircut and sometimes change their name to something gender neutral.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. The trend right now is it's like very anti-beauty. And I guess it's sort of been that way, for a while, but in a different way. Like there's been different aesthetics, but you could be super goth, you could be super punk rock, and you can still be very like feminine or very masculine. It's fascinating that this trend of quote unquote self-expression is really about removing so many of the unique identifiers that are inherent in our bodies, personalities, and biological makeup.
Exactly. And I was having a little debate about this with my friend the other day, because she was like, well, why would people make themselves ugly on purpose? And not to sound too much like Tucker Carlson right now, but people are literally uglifying themselves. And it's a cope and seethe, because back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, when people felt bad about themselves, they didn't like their hair, they didn't like their nose, they didn't like their weight, they would try their best to fit into the beauty standard. Not saying that there's a morality that goes on with that. I don't think people should like have to put on makeup if they don't want to. But now it's the opposite. If they feel like nobody wants to date them, if they feel unattractive, if they feel socially awkward, they just go all the way with it. They just shave their head and dye it blue and get the ugliest tattoos and the ugliest piercings and just oh, no one wants to date me because they're transphobic. That's what it is. It's not because I'm insufferable.
Yeah. It's interesting. I guess I would say like in the 80s and the 90s, it was tied to like a music subculture, a cultural aesthetic, and a sense of like belonging in a community where there was like more to it than just arguing on the internet. And now there is no attachment to an interesting subculture. The subculture is complaining and being oppressed. It's not music. It's not art. It's not fashion. It is just literally like resentment and self-loathing, and that like sucks.
It does, because I feel really bad now looking back at like the punks and the goths and the emos. Yeah. They got so made fun of. They got beat up. They got bullied. Their parents were so mad at them, saying it was Satanism. But this is like worlds beyond that. We need to say an apology to all the emo kids who just like got a lip ring or something. We need to apologize because there are girls. And by the way, most of the people transitioning into non-binary or whatever, they're girls. It's crazy how that switched, because historically transsexuals have almost always the vast majority have been men transitioning into women. Now it's completely flipped. Yeah.
Early childhood too is when what's the book? It's Irreversible Damage. It has really good data. I can't remember the author's name, but she wrote this book called Irreversible Damage that really breaks down the differences between female to male and male to female transgender individuals and what it was like, in the 90s and early 2000s. And there was like a huge jump, I think, in 2014. And it used to be that it would be very young boys who started to identify as girls or associate themselves with femininity. And those are the people who became transgender later in life. And now there's this huge explosion of pubescent girls saying that they're going to be non-binary or, female to male, but they don't even follow through with it. It's really just like, it's just a new manifestation of like anorexia, body dysmorphia, like being unhappy with yourself. Because when I was in school, it was like anorexia. I struggled with that for about like a little less than a year, like maybe 10 or 11 months. I cannot imagine if my parents were like, you know what, live your truth, starve to death. I was like, no, like I need like counseling and a sandwich, not to kill myself, on a hunger strike. And then when my life improved, so did that, so did my health. I regained my appetite, and I just kind of forgot about it. But
it's
that's also
this
because
affirmation
culture,
only thing that I
Yep.
really, really hate. Nothing is wrong with you. We love you how you are, and you should be who you are. And take it further. Chop your breasts off. Take testosterone. We have girls in their early 20s with male pattern baldness, and they're like,
so sad.
"I feel better now." No, you don't. No, you don't, girl.
No.
And when I was in middle school, there was the anorexia thing, but it was like the cutting, like the self-harm thing. And I never did that, but I remember seeing girls in middle school obviously crying for help. It's obviously kind of like a cry for attention, but maybe they really need it, but walking around with scars on their arms. And I remember thinking like, this is so weird. It was kind of like the Tumblr era, and that mental health issue was very glorified on Tumblr and very much an aesthetic, and people thought it was cool. And and that's so unfortunate because now people are left with permanent scars, and some people, took it too far and ended up really, really hurting themselves. But now it's like so normalized. If you have 2 big scars in your chest, that's completely fine, and that's completely celebrated.
Isn't that interesting, though? Because parents would flip out if girls were cutting themselves here. Like, that was not okay. But it's okay to cut yourself here now. And this is, like, so much more extreme and very permanent. Put some vitamin E oil on your Lady Bic cuts, and they'll fade in time, along with your emotional issues. Yeah, but it's interesting. I don't ever want to come across... Like, the risk is so great because it's so easy to make fun of this stuff, and it's kind of like fun and good content. You get like a dopamine hit, for making fun of it. But I don't want to come across as like a ragey Republican who's literally only out there to own the libs. Like, we need like an answer for people who are struggling with this crap. Like, they really do need someone to be like, hey, come over here, get a hug. Don't talk to those weirdos on YouTube who are trying to convince you to hack off your body parts. Like, those creepy people aren't your friends. Like, you need to get real friends.
It's just grooming. And I know that word is so overused, like the word woke, but it's woke and it's grooming. It's just horrible. And I also don't want to come across as like some staunch Republican. I'm not a Scrooge or anything. One of our good friends at FEE, Sarah Higdon, who identifies like as an actual transsexual, who knows she's a male, knows she has XY chromosomes, and chooses to alleviate dysphoria that she feels by, doing physical things to the body and trying to, go through life looking feminine. I think that's well within your right as an adult.
Totally.
But Sarah also has traveled all across the states to go to like state hearings and protest against it being pushed in schools and being allowed for children to transition, because she went through it. She knows what it's like. She knows it's an irreversible medical decision. She knows that she is now sterilized. It just is what it is.
It's no joke. I mean, people like Sarah Higdon and Blair Wyatt are probably some of the best advocates you can have to push back against doing this to children. I mean, you've got to make a fully informed decision. It's like having a hysterectomy. Don't be doing that when you're 16 years old. Please let yourself have a little bit of time to sort out whether or not you want to have decisions like that, that are irreversible. You can't change your body.
We're going to see so many more detransitioners within the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to be ridiculous, because now we're seeing the first couple that have rose to prominence a little bit because it's a novelty. You know, I think Chloe Cole is a great advocate for banning like childhood transitioning, but she's popular because she's like one of the first ones to kind of like come out and be like, this happened to me. Childhood surgeries do exist, because there's like there's two types of people on the left. No, it's not happening. What do you mean? We're not transitioning children. Or the people who know it's happening, they're like, this is okay. This is affirmation. But she attacks the people who say this is not happening. It is. At 15 years old, she got her breasts removed forever. And she had been on puberty blockers and testosterone as a teenager as well. Now she's 19 or 20 and speaking out about this. But all these little trans and non-binary 4-year-olds that we have now, they're going to be so messed up in 10 years, so messed up in 20 years.
It's just intellectually dishonest too, to say that, you know, surgery intervention doesn't exist, or that just a little bit of it exists, because the reality is when you take these massive amounts of hormones, like, they do things to you downstairs as well. It atrophies certain parts of your body. They don't function the same way. You can have pain, you have bleeding. It's not just about it giving you facial hair. Like, it does some pretty like hardcore things.
And it's, you know, it's so depressing to think about, because these people have been lied to. I'm kind of going to circle back a little bit to try not to condemn everybody who is a victim of this, because a lot of, especially kids, especially people like Chloe, I would never make fun of or like talk to a teenager who thinks they're trans and like be mean to them about it, because they've clearly been groomed and lied to.
Totally. And there's a tremendous amount of social pressure to fit into. And that's why you see massive groups of girls doing this at school. You know, it's like on top of all of the social pressure that you feel as a girl going through puberty, especially in a public school, and then your friends all start doing this. There's a huge amount of pressure for you to do it. So
it's insane, because I feel like if I had more left-leaning parents, they could have easily transed me. Because of everything I was into. I was a kid. I was outside digging up worms and fishing and hunting. I did martial arts from I was like 4 or 5 years old. I did taekwondo, jujitsu, Krav Maga, wrestling, everything. I was a huge tomboy. In middle school, I wore a UFC hoodie and basketball shorts every day. And I also started going through puberty a little bit before my friends. So I was taller. I had wider hips. I got my boobs kind of early, like in 6th grade. I got my period kind of early. And so being a tomboy and looking very tall and kind of curvy and feminine, that was so uncomfortable for me. That was so like weird for me. And oh my God, if I had Democrat parents, they would have been like, okay, let's take you to the gender doctor.
Totally same. I was a hardcore tomboy. I did sports. I didn't do girly things. It didn't occur to me. There were no girls in the neighborhood, right? So I grew up around boys. We were outside. We played football, a lot of co-ed, you know, rough and tumble things. If I'd had Democrat parents, they totally would have transed me.
So sad to think about, isn't it?
I did not. It's totally wild. Man, you know, what else is interesting is like lesbians are disappearing. Like,
we have men that are lesbians now.
Yeah, that is not. There's not a thing.
It's actually so sick. It's actually so sick, because I think the reason that a lot of young boys in like the 90s who were starting to become like the first childhood transitioners transition is because being a flamboyant or feminine male has like always been looked at like negatively. Now it's like very much accepted and very cool or whatever to be a feminine male. Go ahead, live your best life. I don't care. But now it's kind of the opposite. If you're a tomboy, if you're kind of a butch or masculine lesbian, it's like, you might as well just go in testosterone. You might as well just cut the breasts off. It's like they're just teaching women a whole nother way to hate their bodies. And it's like, would we ever be cheering on people under 18 getting boob jobs, getting breast augmentations and enhancements? Would we ever be cheering that on? Never.
So nuts.
But this is just the reverse. Oh, you hate your body. You don't like your boobs. Okay, cut them off. Just cut them off.
I hope that the trend, you know, reverses before much more damage is done, but there is going to be a lot of fallout.
So you have a son. How do you think that, I guess, his adolescence and teenage years will be as he grows up? Do you think it's going to be better, worse? Are you going to try to protect him from this, or what's going to happen?
I hope that it'll be better and that the backlash will have already happened by the time he's, starts, like 12 or 13. He's only 9 months old right now.
And he's huge. When I saw,
Yeah,
guys,
he's even bigger now.
He's like
So
half of
heavy.
her body weight.
So heavy. I ate a lot of organ meats and bone broth,
Okay.
and prenatal vitamins.
It
so
worked.
that's how you do it. Eat the yucky part. It's actually very nutritious. We're gonna homeschool him. We're not gonna shield him like from human activity socially, but we're gonna try to just, really surround him with people who are liberty minded, people who care about individualism, and people who are gonna like love and affirm him for being a little boy, what he is, and that there's not gonna be any like shame or weirdness. I don't want my child exposed early on to people who are screaming about toxic masculinity. And then the other thing that I think you need to do, and I don't know exactly what age you start doing this, but we'll figure it out, is you've got to equip your children to be strong enough to withstand this sort of stuff. And so, we have to figure out what's the right way to teach them about that. What's the age appropriate way to do that, to instill in them like good self-esteem and good values, so that when they do come across some weirdo telling them like they shouldn't be a boy, or they're bad for being a boy, or they're a terrible person because they were born like a white male, like that they have enough wherewithal to push back and say like, no, that's not correct. Like my value and worth is like it's intrinsic value based on just like the human condition and me being a human being, and no thank you, have a nice day. I think it's really important for parents to do that.
Absolutely. And I love talking to new parents, new moms, especially because I think I have baby fever, honestly, because I just think about like my future family, but it seems so unattainable in terms of like finances and just where this country is going, because I know
Yeah.
everyone on the left is like, I can't have a baby. We have a fascist in control. The globe is warming. I'm more like, the Federal Reserve is like stronger than ever.
Yeah.
I won't be able to afford it. Like,
Yeah.
do you have any white pills for me or listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen like, don't listen to the toxic part of Twitter. Like, it doesn't happen super early for everyone, but it can happen. Like, I didn't have my first till I was already in my 30s. I'm so happy. Yeah. I'm so happy. I'm like the meme of Goofy, I'll do it again,
Yeah.
And if you're in good health, yes, you can keep having babies. You can keep having babies into your late 30s. By the way, people who had lots of children, they used to start early and go basically till they hit menopause. You can have a ton of kids,
Yeah.
especially if you just take care of yourself. Just take care of yourself. Like the couple of pieces of advice I would give I would say, don't stress yourself out over fertility. A lot of that stuff is, not all of it, but a lot of it is stress related. Like, just be good to yourself and try not to get into too much debt. And if you need to live with roommates or whatever, do that. But debt is the thing, that makes it challenging to get yourself, like independently situated. And it can also affect your stress life and your stress level and your self-esteem. So be healthy, be good to yourself, and try not to accumulate a lot of debt. And then just, take it easy, take it in stride. And when you meet the right person, just like have a bunch of kids and have a great time with it.
Thank you for the white pill, and thank you for the advice, because if you just doom scroll on Twitter like I do all day,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh my God, I'm already too old to have kids. I'm 22. I'm like literally like a
no.
boomer. Like,
I was so sick too. I was so extremely sick with Crohn's disease. I was so ill. I weighed less than 100 pounds. I'd been sick for like 5 years. It was just like, and break up with boyfriend. Oh, that's not going to happen. Oh, I'm too ill. And if you're doom scrolling your life, you're like, oh, it's slipping away. It's slipping away. And, like, lo and behold, like, I got on carnivore diet, and that, like, turned things around, brought my immune system down. I can eat more food now, so I'm not actually on carnivore diet anymore. I met the right person at a Libertarian Party convention. Like I'm
Oh,
healthy. I had a really easy pregnancy. I had like no complications and had a baby. So it's like you could be in a bad place and things can turn around so fast. It's just like, don't ever think that you're in such a bad situation like it can't happen to you. Because yes, it can. Because not only did I like get pregnant and have a baby, I had a really healthy baby.
that honestly, when I met you, I saw you lugging that thing around, that grown man, I was like, that's the healthiest, largest baby I've ever seen in my life,
We
and I
call
couldn't
him,
believe it came out of you.
yeah, we call him Super Chonk. He's so
He's
chonky.
chonky. He's chonky, and I love chonky babies, so that really pleased me to see. Um, and yeah, I mean, I feel like a little bit of hope. I guess like I don't feel bad about like my eggs or whatever because I'm my mom's oldest and she had me at 35, and then my youngest brother
Yeah,
she had at 41.
there you
So
go.
I think I have good genetics for that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and I don't plan on starting. I hope I don't start at 35, but if that's where the chips fall, then I think I could. But
right.
it's just kind of goes back to the shame thing that we're seeing from a lot of like right-wing men who, they
Yeah.
also feel disenfranchised because they haven't started families either, but the
Yep.
blame is really not squarely on the women who haven't started a family with you. I don't know if that's the way. I mean, you can't just bonk a woman on the head and drag her back to your cave like you could in the golden olden days. So kind of have to devise a new strategy here.
Yeah, and I mean, men are culturally hated on too. It's
Yeah.
like, what do you see on like the classic like screenshots of dating apps that go around? Like women saying must be like 6'1", make like $100,000 or more, have this kind of car, da, 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 buy like ludicrous requests considering the caliber of women that they're coming from. I think there just needs to be like a lot more
But get off the dating
love.
apps. If you're on the if
Yeah,
you're on the hookup apps, you're gonna find hookup girls. Cause none of I
yeah,
like out of
true.
all my friends, out of all my female friends, I honestly have like one friend who has like the I guess like the high earner requirement, but she dates guys who are shorter than her, and she's like 5'5". So
Nice.
it's like you know, and I have a lot of
I've
female
never
friends.
used, I don't know. I've never used a dating app. That's like, yeah. I highly
It's
recommend
it's
in
bad.
in
It's bad on
person
there.
in person interactions. But we need like a little more love to guys under 5'10". Guys under 5'10". There's women out there for you.
Yeah,
They like you.
I'm 5'7". I'm like 5'10" in heels. I don't mind it at all. I wouldn't mind it at all. But I do think that guys are kind of getting their senses warped a little bit because they're
Yeah.
not talking to girls in person or in
Yeah.
within their proximity. I mean, the
It's like
Mrs.
a bad
degree is
feedback loop.
a the Mrs. degree is like a saying for a reason. Like you can meet girls at school. Meet girls at school.
Yeah.
Meet girls on your college campus. I know every college campus is leftist and girls are evil and da 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 da. They're all ran through da da da. Da. But go to church. I don't know what to tell you. There's so many good girls out there that. And on
Well,
the flip
just give
side
them.
too, and the people who are like, there's no more good men left. I hate males. I'm just gonna become lesbian. Stop. Get some help because there are good guys too.
I guess it is a choice.
Yeah.
But I mean, just go out and like literally touch grass. Go join. You got to go do something. Go get active in your community. I used to do. I used to go volunteer with two groups that fed the homeless. There were people who were meeting. I don't want to say like hooking up, but people used that to meet other people, and it was done quite successfully because you meet people who have shared values. There's sports groups you can go join like a joke like co-ed, like kickball or dodgeball league. That's a great place to meet people.
These are
Like there's all
foolproof
kinds of
plans. These are
yeah.
literally foolproof plans. And I relate to finding someone that's like within the political space too, because Twitter
Yep.
is honestly a dating app. But
I don't know what world is this where we're telling people how to go out and like this is how you meet another human being. Like,
because we were locked inside for like 2 years just doom scrolling and
yeah,
looking at dating
sad.
apps, and everyone just has crazy unattainable standards on there. But in real life, it's really really not like that. And I understand it's probably different if you're in like New York or LA, but even having lived in LA, it's still like not as bad as they think it is, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. The noisiest, worst part gets the most publicity, but there's normal people out there.
I think that's honestly a great point to end on. There's normal people out there. You can find love. You can find a family. And I wanted to ask you before we go, do you have any like parting words? Maybe more towards, I guess, the overall liberty movement or people who want to come into it, because this podcast is really geared to people who are open to liberty, but they may not consider themselves libertarians yet.
Yeah.
So what could you say to them to kind of bring them closer in?
One of the things that I love the most about the Libertarian Party, especially since the change in leadership, right, is the great sense of community. And so if you're interested in meeting people who are like-minded individuals, who care about individualism, who want to see you prosper economically, you can look into the LP. You know, you can join, check us out at lp.org. Like, we're really there for that. And like, we want to see you have a great future.
Oh, and I'm so stupid. I literally brought this up before the show, but you have a makeup line that you're
Yes.
working on. Can you just give that a quick rundown?
Yes, Bonadia Cosmetics. Hopefully, I'll have my site back up soon. It's under construction right now. But we make cosmetics that are, this is going to sound so out of control, geared towards women. It's about uplifting the beauty of like true biological women and having forward-facing marketing that is pro-female and that makes women feel good about themselves. That's what we're all about. It is custom tailored to like the small pores of a woman's face. We use biological women in our advertisement. And what we really want to do is just get back to like the basics of classic beauty and see beauty elevated in common discourse.
And I love that idea. And I loved it when I originally saw you post about it a few months ago, because I'm a makeup lover. I've loved makeup for years. I like doing like, you know, classic everyday makeup. I like doing dramatic makeup. It's just, it's a really cool form of self-expression to me. But that the beauty community, the beauty industry, because I used to watch all the beauty YouTubers, have been completely taken over by leftist politics, like 100% completely taken over. You can't say anything bad about, or like anything critical, I should say, about the whole trans ideology. You can't have anything that's specifically for females anymore. It's just a messed up show. So I truly agree with your mission statement. And so actually just tell the people where we can find you on social media.
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at angela4lncchair.com. And I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook too. I'm trying to stay off of the boomer social media, but I'm on it.
My guilty pleasure is Facebook. It's kind of fun to be on there. I like talking with boomers. But you guys can follow me at Rondeau Olivia on Twitter and Rondeau.Olivia on Instagram. Thank you so much, Angela, for jumping on. This has been a great conversation. I'm really excited to put this out and, you know, see the feedback from the people. So thank you a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.